States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. He's coming. He's going to be. Our chairman and vice chairman are unable to attend the meeting this evening, so the commission will need to nominate a chair pro tem to preside over the meeting. Are there any nominations?
If it pleases the chair, I nominate Howard Smith.
Second.
We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Maddox? Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Medina?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? Okay. I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Smith.
Thank you. The first thing is we do have a quorum. Next thing is announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have 5 announcements. The first is that there are no cases scheduled for the next meeting on April the 18th. So at the end of the meeting under new business, at the Planning Commission's pleasure, you may cancel that meeting. The second item is that there is an item on the agenda this evening for a comprehensive plan update work session. Staff proposes that since we're missing some members, we push that work session until the May 2nd meeting and hold it then. I think it'll be of great value to have everyone present. The third item is that the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission will be holding a joint work session. This is actually on the board's consent agenda for next week, Tuesday. What's on the agenda is to invite the Planning Commission to their work session on May 22nd at 6 p.m. So pending next week, Tuesday, approval of the consent agenda, they will officially be inviting you, but I wanted to be sure to let you know that that is out there, and so you can reserve that day on your calendars. The fourth item is that the Planning Commission requested a tour of a operational solar energy facility. And I've been looking to schedule a tour in Louisa County. There's about a 300-acre facility there operated by Dominion. And so I am working on that. What I'll do is I'll try to get 2 or 3 dates that are reserved that I can coordinate with the commission to see which date works the best. And in talking with a couple of members, it looks like maybe the first couple of weeks of early in May would be the potential target time. So that's forthcoming. We'll be in communication with you as that develops.
Wanda,
yes.
on that, is it possible to coordinate that with the board to see if any of those
Yes,
folks are?
that is another thing, extending the invitation to board members. And I should also mention that we would be coordinating with the planning director in Louisa County so that we can talk to staff that have been involved in the project as well to learn about their experiences.
Okay, thank you.
And my final announcement just has to do with the State Corporation Commission public hearing that has been scheduled for the S-Power cases. There is a local public hearing that's to occur May 9th at both 2 p.m. and 7 p.m. here in this room. This public hearing is at the state level. It has nothing to do with the local public hearings that will occur. The local public hearings are for the special use permits that would allow development of the solar facilities. These public hearings that the SCC are holding are related to a state level permit. And those are my announcements.
Thank you. Next is review and approval of the minutes. I take it everybody's had the opportunity to look over the minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Thomas, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Medina. All in favor say aye. Aye. Next is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Okay. Moving right along to Summit Crossing Estate preliminary plat.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This is a review and potential approval of the preliminary plat for Summit Crossing Estates. Summit Crossing Estates PDH3 rezoning was approved with proffers by the Board of Supervisors on March 16th, 2007, enabling the construction of a 70-lot subdivision. The project is located approximately 2,000 feet east of the intersection of Massaponax Church Road and Summer Crossing Road. The plat was reviewed by the technical committee and does not fully comply with all ordinance requirements. Section 20-5.1.8D of the subdivision ordinance requires that subdivisions with lots that are 25,000 square feet or less have curb and gutter streets. Section 20-5.1.8K3 of the subdivision ordinance requires sidewalks on all streets in residential subdivisions where curb and gutter are provided. Summit Crossing Estates will have approximately 70 lots with an average lot size of 17,499 square feet. The applicant is proposing to construct the project without curb and gutter, utilizing ditch sections on each side of the street with sidewalks only on one side of the street. In accordance with Section 20-4.1.5 of the subdivision ordinance, exceptions to the applicant is requesting exceptions to the provisions of Article 5 of the subdivision ordinance. The applicant has submitted a letter outlining the following reasons for the request. The first is the reduced impervious area will enhance the stormwater management by reducing the size of stormwater management facilities. The second is it will provide improved water quality in the runoff as the runoff is filtered via increased green space. The third, it will minimize impacts to the natural environment. The fourth is the applicant deems that it meets the intent of the county code by preserving natural features of the site and minimizing impacts on these natural features. And the fifth rationale is that the provisions of sidewalks on one side of the street provides benefit to the pedestrians along the streets with higher traffic volumes. Staff is supportive of the ordinance and notes that the property is in the mixed-use area and identified on the future land use map. This area is intended to develop into a more densely populated area, and it is in close proximity to other parcels that have been approved for development with higher density residential. Staff also acknowledges the benefits of less impervious surface as it relates to the improved stormwater management and can support this project with the ditch section streets. However, staff is less supportive of the sidewalks on one side of the street. It is common and customary in large lot subdivisions not to provide sidewalks. It is more common and customary in small lot subdivisions to provide sidewalks. Excuse me. Excuse me. It is more common and customary in small lot subdivisions to provide sidewalks to limit the interaction of pedestrians and vehicles. Sidewalks on one side of the street increase the number of pedestrian crossings and opportunities for conflict of pedestrian and cars. Sidewalks on both sides of the streets create a more safe condition for pedestrians by limiting the need to cross streets. Often these pedestrians are young people moving about in the neighborhood. Dual sidewalks create a comfortable and inviting opportunity for people to walk and interact in the neighborhoods on both sides of the streets. We are building communities that are going to be here for a long time, and increased amenities allow communities and neighborhoods to retain value. Limiting the sidewalks to one side of the street seems to be a short-term view, ignoring the residual benefits. When sidewalks are constructed in the right-of-way to the appropriate standard, the maintenance is the responsibility of the Virginia Department of Transportation and not of the homeowners. Staff recommends approval of the exception request to allow the ditch section streets, but does not recommend the exception for sidewalks on one side of the street. And just to show you on the screen, there is a layout of the project. And then this is a typical section of the street layout that the applicant is proposing. As you can see, it's has two 12-foot wide travel lanes, ditch sections, and then the 5-foot sidewalk in this general area here. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson?
I just have a comment. I can go with the ditches, and I understand that runoff situation, but I can't support this issue without both sidewalks in place.
Any other board members? Questions or comments? Ms. Maddox?
I'm the newest member here, and I was just wondering, how, have we approved other subdivisions with only one sidewalk on the street? I mean, to me, that seems like not very common, that we would normally have two sidewalks. But I don't know, has it been something that we've ever approved, something like that? Anybody know?
Well, Ms. Mattis, I can tell you, there probably are sidewalks in the county, I mean, there probably are subdivisions in the county where you'd have a sidewalk on a single side of the street.
Right.
But I can't recall in my time here where an applicant has asked for an acceptance to the preliminary plat to do so. Most of the small lot subdivisions do comply with the ordinance and have
Right,
sidewalks
that's what-
and curb and gutter.
That's what I was assuming, because I didn't know if, I was used to always having two sidewalks, so that's why I was just checking.
Any other comments?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bullock?
I want to go with the staff recommendation of the sidewalks too. We need the sidewalks.
Any other comments? At this time, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the, I recommend approval of the, with one exception, with the, we allow for the ditch sections of the street and the, requiring two sidewalks.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second to it?
I'll second to that.
There's a motion, a second. Any discussion? Call for roll call vote. Ms. Maddox?
Aye.
Mr. Bullock?
Aye.
Mr. Thompson? Aye. Ms. Medina? Nay. The chair votes aye. Passes 4-1. At this time, the board will open up for public hearings and SUP 18-004 Zoan Baptist Church.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a presentation for you. This is a request for special use permit approval to allow a private school to operate in the existing Zoan Baptist Church facility. The church property totals approximately 7 acres and is currently zoned residential 1. A special use permit is required for a private school to operate on residential 1 property. Currently, there is a school operating in the facility. The name is Summit Academy. They're actually subject to a notice of violation right now for operating without the special use permit. All action related to that notice of violation has been on hold pending the results of this special use permit request. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, which I'll present to you shortly. Here's an aerial map of the area with the church property outlined in red. The property is located on the south side of Plank Road. You can see here it's across the street from Harrison Crossing Shopping Center. This is Riverbend High School and then the Royal Oak subdivision. Here's an existing zoning map of the area with the church again highlighted in red. The property is zoned residential 1 and is surrounded by other residential zoned properties, but there's also a mix of commercial and office zones as well. Here's a recent photo of the church. This is taken from one of their 2 points of access and facing west. You can also see the cell phone tower there that was approved a couple years ago. Here you can see their 2 points of access. This is the church's main point of access. Here's their eastern secondary access. This is the youth wing of the church where the classrooms are currently, parking, and the drop-off zones here. Again, Summit Academy's current student enrollment is 30 students with grades 9 through 11. They anticipate in their school year 2018 approaching that they'll have a full curriculum of 9th through 12th grade with approximately 50 students at that time. The school hours are Monday through Friday from 8:15 to 3 during the months of August through early June. Students either drive to school or are dropped off by their parents. There's no busing or transportation services offered, and there's no outdoor activities that take place related to the school on this site. The parking that's on the property, it'll serve the church and the school as they are operating at different times, so it's adequate for both uses. The applicant anticipates that the maximum student capacity in the church facility as is approximately 120 students. So staff assumed the maximum 120 students to analyze the proposal's impact on traffic. Based on the ITE trip generation manual, at maximum capacity, the school will generate approximately 298 daily trips, with 97 in the AM peak and 70 in the PM peak. The existing 2 points of access currently do not meet VDOT entrance standards, and as part of VDOT's review of the request, they recommended that both entrances be improved and brought up to standard. The county's traffic engineer reviewed the proposal and weighed VDOT's recommendation against current traffic conditions on Plank Road, the level of service on Plank Road, and crash data. The level of service along Route 3 between Big Bend Boulevard and Harrison Crossing currently operates at a level of service C, which is in the AM and PM peak hours, and that's an acceptable level of service per our comp plan goals. The main western entrance here is located 700 feet from Big Bend Boulevard and 1,600 feet west from Harrison Road. Both of those intersections are signalized, so they create a blackened traffic, which allows safe entry and exits from the site. And this entrance is 40 feet wide, which actually does meet commercial entrance width standards. Here in this section of Plank Road, you can see is a divided highway, so this entrance, for all intent and purposes, operates as a right in and right out. And over the past 5 years, this stretch of Plank Road has averaged 3.7 crashes per year, which is not considered a high crash volume. 5 or more would be considered a high crash rate. Given the limited amount of traffic generated by the school use and then the existing levels of service on Plank Road, the county is not recommending that any improvements be made to the access points at this time. The proposed school will operate, key findings in favor of their request is that the school will operate in the existing facility on site, and that complements the future land use designation of institutional land use. Nearby, there's commercial and employment land uses, and all of these work in harmony together. There are no proposed changes to the site or the building, and the use will be contained within the existing facility, so there'll be minimal impacts to the transportation network. Findings in favor or against is, of course, that the existing access points don't meet VDOT standards at this time. Given that the private school will operate on the existing facility with no changes to the building or site, staff's identified no concerns with the use as proposed. While those existing access points don't meet current standards, the use will generate a limited amount of traffic and will not degrade the level of service on Plank Road, which is currently operating at an acceptable level. However, staff's position is based on the school operating in the existing facility with the capacity that is allowed. Should the student enrollment increase, the special use should be reassessed. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the special use permit with the following conditions: that the maximum allowable number of students shall be 120, and any increase would require an amendment to the special use permit, and that all building and fire code requirements must be adhered to as the student enrollment increases from what it is today to the 120 maximum. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicants are here. They don't have a presentation for you, but if you have any questions, they're happy to answer as well.
If I may, just one question. You said our people said it, the VDOT recommendation, they were okay with it.
Right, the county is fine with
Thank you.
not improving the access
Thank
points
you very
at this
much.
time.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. Okay, at this time, Is there anyone here signed up to speak?
I have Mr. Malcolm and Mr. Booth. I think they're both with Zoan. Did you wish to speak this evening?
Okay,
Okay.
so they're just here,
Yeah,
here
I
for
think
questions? Okay.
they just signed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Please, Chair, I move that we approve this SUP with staff's conditions involved.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
I second.
We'll take a roll call vote. Ms. Maddox? Mr. Bullock? Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Medina? Aye. And the chair votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, please close the public hearing as well.
Oh, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you. We'll now go to new business.
So without objection, we will cancel the April 18th Planning Commission meeting. So the next scheduled meeting would be the May 2nd meeting.
Okay. That doesn't need a vote, does it?
Yeah, no vote necessary.
Okay, thank you. We now move to public comment. If there's anyone here, okay.
I have Daniel Kulig, followed by Jim Smith.
Good evening, Commissioners. I would like to address my concern for the potential of erosion and stormwater damage to the properties and wetlands and tributaries of Fawn
Excuse me,
Lake.
sir.
Yes.
May I please lay out the rules for public speaking really quickly?
Sure.
Just to be sure everybody is aware. Everybody that would like to speak, you have 3 minutes. If you represent a group, please let us know up front. You will have 5 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Okay, my name and address are Daniel Kulig. I reside at 10520 Wildbrook Court in Spotsylvania County. I would like to address my concern for the potential of erosion and stormwater damage to the properties, wetlands, and tributaries of Fawn Lake from the construction and operation of the Spotsylvania Solar Energy Center. In their original special use permit filing and in their current update, S-Power indicates that they intend to employ a planting of native seed mix for site stabilization following construction. No other methods of erosion control or stormwater management are included in their plan, nor are mitigation plans for the construction period specifically addressed. As indicated in Site Plan Exhibit EX17, the topographical gradient for the site shows a fairly pronounced downhill slope from Site A towards the Fawn Lake properties. The streams and wetlands internal to all of the sites will also be impacted by heavy stormwater based on the topography. At a similar but much smaller solar installation, 200 acres in Essex County, major erosion and stormwater damage has occurred to the surrounding area and in particular to the watershed and wetlands around the site and the county highways. Essex County and the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality were addressing the damage as of March, and in addition, they brought in an engineering firm specializing in erosion control to assist in stabilization. A similar event could in fact occur here to the wetlands within the properties surrounding sites A, B, and C unless specific mitigation plans are developed and executed. In their comments to the State Commerce Commission regarding S-Power's application, the DEQ and Office of Stormwater Management stated several recommendations concerning project-specific plans that should be executed. DEQ recommended the development and submission of project-specific erosion and sediment control plans and project-specific stormwater management plans. DEQ stated that the local ESC and SWM requirements must be requested through the locality, which would be Spotsylvania County. I request that Spotsylvania County Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors require S-Power to submit site-specific, detailed erosion and sediment control plans and site-specific, detailed stormwater management plans to the county for review and approval prior to the completion of the permit evaluation phase of the SUP process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Smith, followed by David Hammond.
Good evening, and thank you for your service to our county. Appreciate that. I think we all do. My friend here just usurped my speech. So I am not going to repeat the same thing that he just said. But I am concerned about the 1.8 million solar panels that are going to be put somewhere between where I live and Catharpin Road, and will cover 5 square miles, the same size as the city of Fredericksburg, and the size of the city, half the size of the city of Manhattan. We are concerned about our property values. We're concerned about the erosion factor. We're concerned about the impact on Fawn Lake, the ecosystem, unforeseen things that could happen and that have happened around the country, as I've taken a lot of time to read about the consequences of poor planning and just taking things for granted. So I hope that you will look at this seriously. Have you all read the testimony of Russ Mueller that was presented to the SCC back in March? Are you familiar with all of the testimony and the questions and the pushback and the consequences of not doing this project right? Has everybody on the commission read that or taken the time to read that?
We all have that information, sir.
Have you read it? I mean, have you just, I'm not trying to be, just have you read it all and understand it?
At this time, we're not answering questions.
Oh, you're not?
This is-
Okay.
This is your opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
David Hammond, followed by Bill Parsons.
My name is Dave Hammond. I live at 11416 Seymour Lane in Spotsylvania. I did provide you with notes. You should have this in front of you, and you'll see it's more than I can cover in 3 minutes. So I'm going to hit the highlights and ask you to read the rest at your leisure. So thank you for the opportunity to comment on S-Power's decommissioning and site restoration plan that was just recently submitted. There's some aspects of the plan that do not comply with the county ordinance for solar energy facilities, and some areas where I think the ordinance should be revised. So provisions 11 through 18 pertain to decommissioning and site remediation. I'll go through a couple of the provisions. So provision 11 requires the plan to be executed and notarized by the landowners, applicant, and other responsible parties. The plan only refers to Sustainable Power Group, parentheses S-Power. However, another company will buy the land, that's Sustainable Property Holdings, and 5 new special purpose entities have been created to own and operate different portions of the project. The county should evaluate whether all of the other entities should be listed as responsible parties, or if they are adequately covered as subsidiaries of Sustainable Power Group. And I'm going to skip the next couple in the interest of time, go down to provision 15. And I think this should be revised to require the equipment be removed on an urgent basis. It allows for the equipment to sit idle for a year before any decommissioning starts. And presumably, this equipment will not be maintained and broken panels will not be removed after the operations have been terminated. And provision 16 is ambiguous about whether the landowner will be held liable. We recommend clarifying the wording to ensure that all responsible parties, including the landowner, are held liable. I'm going to skip the rest to the bottom of the page. I'm going to skip to the back, which gets into the plan submitted by S-Power. In particular, section 3.2, the performance bond. The county should review the 1-year renewal period. The bond must survive bankruptcy by at least 2 years, and it's doubtful if a bankrupt LLC will be able to renew the surety bonds. So I really recommend you look at that time period. And then finally, attachment A, the cost estimate. I mean, how can I say it? This is just outrageously low. They estimate that they will dismantle and remove all of the equipment for $750,000.
Okay, sir, your time is up. If you can wrap it up, please.
Yep. Well, I'm done here, but you'll see that it's got to be a lot higher than that, and the recycling costs in particular should be included in the cost. Thank you for your time.
Bill Parsons, followed by Richard Janali.
Good evening. My name is Bill Parsons, 11322 Fawn Lake Parkway, Spotsylvania. I would like the commission to know that I'm not opposed to solar power. But after reading reports and potential issues with this particular project, there are potential long-lasting negative impacts on the people and the environment in the surrounding area and possible bodies of water further downstream. The report that I referenced was prepared by Scott King, a certified geospatial analyst and image scientist of GeoSeer LLC. I would ask that the Spotsylvania Commission and supervisors consider Mr. King's analysis that states that the local aquifer by itself is not robust enough to support the proposed project of this magnitude. Also, the erosion control and runoff will be an issue if a proper containment plan is not implemented. Without a well-designed and engineered plan, chemicals and contaminants will enter into the aquifer, impacting human drinking water and wildlife habitats, recreational areas, etc. Mr. King summarizes his report by stating that these issues are not insurmountable and can be managed and overcome through proper analysis and engineering techniques. These issues need to be addressed by S-Power in their scope and plan for this project and approved by an environmental experts in the field. If these issues are left unaccounted for and unaddressed in their scope, there are potentially long-term financial impacts for Spotsylvania County, and they could be significant if we have these issues are not addressed initially. Thank you.
Richard Janali, followed by Michael O'Beer.
Good evening. I'm Richard Janelle, 12,000 Fawn Lake Parkway, Spotsylvania. The issue I'm bringing up has to do with solar power, but before I start talking, I'd like to see just a show of hands of everybody who's here for the solar power issue, please. Thank you. Okay, so I was out and about today, and another one of my neighbors was out and about, and we found what we think is unauthorized initial construction of the solar facility, S-Power solar facility. I sent the information to Wanda. Unfortunately, I don't have a presentation to show you, but I did send her pictures of what appears to be I-beam steel poles about 7 feet tall above ground level that have been sunk in the ground about 10 feet apart. And these are substantial I-beam steel beams. They're the kind of beams that you would put in the ground in order to support construction of a large building. Okay? We found them in 2 locations that I can point out on this map if you're interested, but I don't think it really matters. It's just inside the site a few hundred feet from access roads that have been put in for trucks to come and go. I also am aware of the fact that there are construction trailers now on site, and there is equipment of some sort that has white shrink wrapping on it. This suggests that there is the beginnings of construction that may not be authorized yet because there is no SUP. So I request that someone check this out, ascertain what's going on, and if it is in fact construction, that the applicants for the SUP be told to cease and desist. I'd also like to note to the commission tonight that Culpeper has decided to put a moratorium on any building of solar facilities in their area. And just today, I understand it appeared in the paper that they published their guidelines for solar power facilities in their area. I highly recommend, and I actually plead with you to do the same thing. The size of this solar power facility is immense. The potential impact on all the people around, if you look at this map, this is just Site A, and There is so much potential impact. There's 2,764 homes that are right around the periphery of this site. The potential impact on wells, on property values, just in this area, this is Fawn Lake up here, this area here, this area here, and this area here is programmed to have 132 home sites on it. This one in particular right here, 59, I can't imagine why anybody would want to build a house there. And if those properties are not sold, then the county is going to forego somewhere in the neighborhood of the amount of money.
Sir,
that you-
sir, your time is up. If you could wrap it up, please.
Okay. I think I'm done. Thank you.
Michael Obier, followed by Bill McGrath.
Hello, my name is Michael O'Beer, 11201 Chancellor Meadows Lane, Locust Grove, Virginia. I would like to ask the commission to think about the 50-foot buffer that's proposed by S-Power. The distance, even with 6-foot tall pine trees, would not block the visual impact from the field. I propose the Kingston, Canada Act, which would be 362-foot distance from the solar field from any residence with trees, earth berms, and shrubs. I'll give Mr. White, Ms. Parrish, Mr. Benson, and McLaughlin copies of this study. The distance of the impact on my water well, my foundation, and my in-ground pool would be better chanced at 362 foot from being damaged. Drawings put 3 silt ponds for runoff from the property lines from the solar field within 100 foot from my home and my well. The contaminations from runoff from these silt ponds would destroy my well, making it unusable. And I've been living there for 32 years, and it's 47 foot deep, and I've never run out of water as long as we've been there, even through these hot summers. It's the owner's right to timber his land, but the timber company cut every tree right up to the property line. There's nothing to buffer the wind or any of the weather we've been having here lately. It's like a windstorm in my house. The other questions I have to study is the dirty power that these things are putting off, the electromagnetic field, the equipment that they're going to install. They haven't given anything, but they're dealing with that yet. And the general contractor's background that they've hired to install this thing. Thank you very much.
Bill McGrath, followed by Irvin Boyles.
Good evening. My name is Bill McGrath. I live at 10721 Kirkland Drive, Spotsylvania. In a previous life, I was chairman of the Environmental Commission, a township in New Jersey, so I'm kind of familiar with the large land use projects. And this one scares me a little bit. I'd like to also talk about setbacks and buffers. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you regarding the installation of commercial solar facilities in our county. Specifically, I'd like to comment on the buffer that will be required for such facilities. The current S-Power plant facility requires a 50-foot buffer around the Spotsylvania site. I believe that this buffer is inadequate to reduce the visual impact of the facility on surrounding residents. Approximately 100 to 200 occupied or planned residents in the Fawn Lake community would be immediately adjacent to the proposed installation. Though I do not know the exact number, I believe a large number of additional residences are also located around the perimeter of the sites. In addition to placing solar panels as close as 50 feet from the property line, S-Power site plans indicate that they will provide natural existing buffers at only a few locations around the perimeter and add buffers at only a few other locations. Their sketch on drawing EX2-1 for Site A shows a berm located in a 50-foot setback with no vegetation other than grass. Their plans indicate that the majority of the perimeter will not be provided with any buffer, including more than half of the border with Fawn Lake community. This is unacceptable and inconsistent with S-Power's statement at our January community meeting that S-Power will be a great neighbor that will not be seen or heard. Many localities are currently in the process of addressing the visual impact of solar installations. Today's Freelance Star contained an article regarding solar facilities at Culpeper. The Board of Supervisors voted to require a minimum of 150-foot setback for such installations, with one supervisor again saying that the buffer was inadequate. It's my understanding that the National Park Service requires a 250-foot setback. And again, in Currick County in North Carolina, with a solar farm of about 2,000 acres has a minimum setback of 150 feet, is considering an increase of up to 300 feet, depending upon the ability of the buffer to block the view. They currently have imposed a moratorium on new solar projects until they can revise their regulations. Although generally each site proposed for development differs in size and configuration, as a rule, the larger the site, the less the impact the buffer size would have on a given development project. Likewise, the larger the project, the greater the potential for impact on neighbors. To demonstrate this, I took a look at two hypothetical sites of 6,500 acres and 650 acres, rectangular in shape with an aspect of 4 times the length. Length was 4 times the size versus the width. If the required buffer were to be increased from 50 feet to 200 feet on the 6,500 acre site, the buffer would be 5.9% of the site total, an increase over 1.5%. For a smaller site of 650 acres, the larger buffer would be 18.2% of the site as compared with 4.7%.
Sir, if you could wrap up your comments, your time is up.
Yes, sir. Number of very important environmental issues associated with the ESSA Power project. One of the major impacts neighbors have with solar field is visible. Adequately sized and effective buffers can address this issue. Spotsylvania has the opportunity at this point to address the issue and learn from our neighbors and neighboring states. Thank you for your time.
Irvin Boyles, followed by Kevin McCarthy.
Good evening. I'm Irv Boyles. I live at 11501 General Wadsworth Drive at Fawn Lake. We're probably within equal distance from the Site A that we'll be able to hear and feel the effects of that installation. We are on the lake. The lake has been considered by the Department of Inland Game or Fish and Inland Game Fisheries as one of the cleanest and clearest lakes in the state of Virginia due to the efforts by Fawn Lake to make this happen. And I'm concerned about what's going to happen with the installation resulting from the pollutants and possible contaminants that are going to come from this installation. The aquifer currently feeds the lake. The number of springs under the lake, and that's what provides the water there, as well as other inlets from other waterways coming into the lake. One of my concerns here is that the solar panels, the photovoltaic panels, contain cadmium, which is a known carcinogen. You heard 1.8 million panels are going to be out there in a large area, and the possibility of damage to those panels and to leak those elements into the land or the waterways around are enormous. And it is inevitable that a lightning strike, a hailstone, any of these can damage any one of these panels. And so part of the message here is we want to ensure that number one, is there an emergency action plan in place before there's any construction out there in the case of one of these panels being broken or any of these panels being broken. So would like to make sure that this plan has in place what the actions are that will be taken and by whom to immediately jump in and start trying to mitigate the damage that can come from it. This would include all the points of contact and all the residents that might be affected by it. They need to be part of this action plan.
Sir, if you could wrap it up, your time is up.
Okay, I have one more point to make then. Also, we need to ensure that S-Power has a insurance policy in place that will, for any damage, to cover any damages and expenses that might come from any of these accidents from this equipment. And then, and any injuries and any other cleanup expenses, all of those are covered. But they don't befall the residents in the area to clean it up. So.
Kevin McCarthy, followed by Moya Doss.
Good evening. My name is Kevin McCarthy. My wife and I reside at 11400 Mead Point in Fawn Lake, Spotsylvania. We urge the Spotsylvania County Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to place, I second the motion made by my neighbor, Mr. Janelle, to place a moratorium on any construction of solar facilities until such time as the appropriate due diligence can be performed and completed. Specifically, we request the following. First, that the Planning Commission and/or the Board of Supervisors secure independent professional analyses and assessments of the environmental, health, safety, financial, and economic impact that a solar facility of the magnitude contemplated would have on Spotsylvania County, its residents, landowners, homeowners, taxpayers, and businesses. Such assessment and report should not be provided to the county by those seeking special land use permits, but rather should be secured separately by the county directly with reimbursement to the county from the applicant or applicants. Second, the Planning Commission and/or the Board of Supervisors should prepare, publish, and deliver to all constituencies previously mentioned a thorough cost-benefit analysis detailing exactly how this proposed solar facility will benefit the residents and taxpayers of Spotsylvania County. Until such time as these studies and reports are completed, we urge the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to halt any further consideration of the S-Power proposed facility and enact a moratorium on any other such development. Thank you.
Moya Doss, followed by Steve Doss.
Hello, my name is Moya Doss, 11504 Burnside Place, and I don't know how I follow that act, but we've lived in Fawn Lake for over 20 years now. We came to Spotsylvania from Illinois because of what Spotsylvania had to offer, the beautiful rolling hills, you know, friendly neighborhoods. And to take a quote from the county website, the growing Spotsylvania community has attracted many dynamic commercial and retail businesses which serve area residents and visitors. How does the solar farm serve our area when none of the electricity, to my understanding, will be coming our way, nor will it bring visitors? That's not something I think people come here to see. I personally am going to be very directly affected by this solar farm. My husband and I just bought a lake lot that's going to have a great view of that solar farm. And had I known that this was going to be taking place, never, ever would I have purchased that property. I've had friends of mine who are realtors calling me up saying, well, what are you going to do now? Because they've had people now who are expressing a disinterest in moving into our neighborhood because they hear that there's going to be a major solar farm there. And they don't want to deal with the noise, the possible environment problems, and other things. So please take into consideration there's also a personal level, too, for a lot of people. And it will affect our home values, whether people think it will or not. Is there some reason why they couldn't start smaller? Why are they starting with probably the 10th largest solar farm supposedly in the world? It just seems kind of, I went to the talk that S-Power had in Fawn Lake, and there were so many vague things that they had to say for answers for specific questions we had. That's a real concern to me. I'm concerned about their lack of answers. I'm concerned that they don't seem to have a comprehensive business plan. I'm concerned about all these solar panels becoming obsolete before they're even installed. It just seems like things are changing so quickly that stuff like that, I think, is just going to be obsolete way before the 30 years, they say, and I'm very concerned that they won't be around to clean up the mess that they create over there with all of this. The health of our lake has always been the utmost important. every memo we get from the lake is, don't put this chemical in, don't do this on your boats, don't do that. You know, the lake has to be preserved. And if our aquifer is going to be threatened, it's going to affect our entire lake. So thank you for listening, I appreciate it.
Steve Doss, followed by Judy Janelle.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Doss, 11504 Burnside Place, Spotsylvania, Virginia. Much of what I wanted to say tonight has already been said quite eloquently by all of my neighbors here. What I would like to say is I would just like to wake up one morning without having the living hell scared out of me the way this has gone on for 6 months now. The impact of this extends way beyond the economic benefits to the county of Spotsylvania. A project of this size has no proof of concept today. It doesn't exist anywhere in America in a macro environment that we live in here. There's nothing that we can visit. We can't even begin to come up with the questions that are going to need answers to something like this. I would recommend that this be allowed to go forward only with proof of concept, and that it be done in stages, stages not to exist. The largest planned concepts today east of the Mississippi River, which really is about 500 acres, and do so in a part of their planned project that would, create that proof of concept and let it go forward from that. Thank you very much for your time.
Judy Janelle, followed by Catherine Lavello.
Judy Janelle, 12,000 Fawn Lake Parkway. And I get down to who is responsible. A group, S-Power, applied for a permit here. However, to the State Corporate Commission, a bunch of LLCs applied, and S-Power is not named as that any one of the LLCs. The original application from the county states the applicant's S-Power Development Company. In their recent decommissioning and site restoration plan, they state that Sustainable Power Group, S-Power, or its successor, is in the interest and will be responsible for the decommissioning. The applicants down for the SCC, Plenmont Solar, 75 megawatts, Plenmont Solar 2, 240 megawatts, Highlander Solar Station, 165, Richmond, 20. Highlander LLC is the entity that will be owned by the 4 above entities. And then there is still yet one more LLC that would own the land. So when you start looking at the two things, SCC and Spotsylvania County permitting, those names need to be the same group. They have issued a proposal of a plan, an actual business plan. It should, if I apply to build a house, my entire architectural drawings, blueprints, everything, structures, all laid out ahead of time, where it will go exactly. The same needs to be here, and because there are environmental disasters, forces that exist as well, everything from the aquifer, runoff, tornadoes, hailstorms, lightning strikes, there need to be a fully, a full plan there, from who pulls the trigger for the alerts down to exactly what is to happen, full standard operating procedures for each issue. Along with decommissioning, the plan needs to be totally laid out. There is a transition to Percosvite titanium cells, whereupon these cadmium cells, 1.8 million of them, what do? It could be like a cathode ray TV. Try to get rid of it. So I think it all needs to be taken into consideration, and before permitting of any type, you need the full plan. Thank you.
Catherine Lavello.
I'm Catherine Lavello, 11210 Fawn Lake Parkway. First, I want to thank you, members of the commission, for taking time out of your lives to look after the best interests of our residents. And I am shocked and horrified that they've already started building stuff on this land, so some of the things I'm going to talk about may already be in play. You have copies of an article and my statement. I'd like to discuss a significant concern with the type of soil that is present in our region and the serious environmental consequences that can occur if sulfidic soils are disturbed by excavation or regrading of the soil, especially how this may be caused by building a massive solar power farm. So I provided you a copy of the article that describes 2 local case studies where very serious problems were encountered. One case study covers the construction of Stafford Airport in the late 1990s. Extensive regrading was performed to level the site for the long runway. Excavations up to 25 meters were performed to level off ridges. Sulfidic soils were exposed and spread across the site. Later tests of the soil found extremely low pHs ranging from 1.8 to 5.3 with an average of 3.0, very acidic. Severe and expensive damage resulted. Vegetation would not grow in the soil. Galvanized steel pipes and concrete-lined ditches were corroding from the acidic runoff. Years of treatments and reclamation was required. The second case study in the article is a housing development in Fredericksburg. Similar problems were discovered in 2003 when a major land disturbance exposed a layer of sulfidic soil. Soil was so acidic that grass would not grow on the lawns of the new homes. So in response, Fredericksburg adopted a new ordinance to reduce exposure of sulfidic materials during construction. The acid sulfate soils testing policy specifies that soils must be tested for pH and potential acidity to the maximum depth of the excavation to ensure that acidity levels are appropriate to support vegetation and to minimize damage to water quality and building materials. I don't know if there's a similar policy in place in Spotsylvania County, but it's vital to consider this. And I understand that S-Power is planning to conduct a shovel test across the site in the near future. I recommend that the county require S-Power to test the soil to the maximum depth of excavation at each location. If S-Power is planning to significantly regrade portions of the site, then understanding the composition of the layers of soil that will be exposed is critical to avoid dangerous and expensive contamination of runoff, groundwater, and surface soil of thousands of acres of land. And this may already be happening because if they are already building on this land, this hasn't even been addressed. Thank you for thinking of us.
Thank you. That's everyone that is signed up. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak? Mr. King?
Alfred King, 11102 Fawn Lake Parkway in Spotsylvania. We've heard tonight a number of potential problems, a number of real problems, and the county and the staff and the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors simply has had no experience on a project of this size. 2 meetings ago, I think there was a comment or a suggestion that you form a citizens committee to advise the staff, the Planning Commission, and perhaps the Board of Supervisors. No one person can be aware of all of the issues that have been brought forth tonight, issues that ultimately you're going to have to deal with. So I urge, and I don't know how this can be done, whether it requires Board of Supervisors authority or what, but I urge that a committee of concerned citizens, informed concerned citizens, be appointed to work with the staff, the Planning Commission, and ultimately the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay, thank you very much. We'll close the public comment. Is there any other business by the board? And hearing none at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So move. A second? Second. So move. Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.